Hey, hey, welcome into another edition of Tony Talks Trash About Music. Tony and Dino here tonight, kind of on a somber note. We're here, to talk a little bit about the passing and really the greatness of Kristofferson. Died September 28th, American country music singer, wrote so many great songs. But towards the end, he ended up not really towards the end, but I guess with some of the prime of that, he did quite a bit of acting and was very good. There's a lot of things about his life that are very interesting. He went to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. People don't realize that, but he ended up dying age 88 in Hawaii. He died on Maui, where he lived there. Really, the songwriter is probably the biggest thing for him. I have my favorites. So I'll talk about it in a minute. But the songwriting credits, the big ones for the good times. Bobby McGee, Sunday Morning Coming Down, Help Me Make It Through the Night. I mean, this is some of the big stuff. I remember seeing him personally in the Highwayman tour, the big tour with Johnny Cash and he and Waylon Jennings and such.
Yeah.
And it was something else, man. I mean, I saw that at the Cap Center. And normally I wouldn't be moved by something like that, but I've always liked him. He went through a period of time when he did the stuff for Pat Garrett, and he was in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, the movie for that. University of Oxford had a long career with that, but really when I'm talking about the music that I like, there's really a couple records here that I favor, and one of them is his second record. I mean, the Silver Tongued Devil and I. This one
Yeah,
is
that's a great one. That's a
yeah,
classic, Kristofferson.
yeah. It's what I guess it's considered an outlaw classic, but I never really
Yeah.
consider. I guess they consider him to be in it, but man, it's not. I just never saw him myself. That I guess I didn't discover it when I discover all those other stuff. But
Yeah.
Jody and the Kid, Billy D, Good Christian Soldier, Breakdown, man. Loving her was
Yeah.
the that was the big one. When I Loved Her, Pilgrim Chapter 33, Epitaph. So I mean, he was really at the top of his game. It's funny they said he was at the beginning he was working as a janitor. It's funny he's a Rhodes Scholar, but he's in there sweeping the floors of the studios at Nashville to try to get.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about that too.
Go,
What
go ahead,
happened?
man. Go ahead, take this. This is one of two. I showed the first one, Silver Tongue Devil, and I. What do you got to say about that?
Well, when you mentioned that, and he, when you talk about Kristofferson and the word, the terminology that you've heard before, and I know you've heard this, Renaissance man. They'll call an artist a Renaissance man. Well, there's not many artists. If you go back the last 50 to 75 years and say, oh, he was a real Renaissance man, not only a singer, but he was also this. Well,
Right.
Kristofferson was everything. I
And
mean,
he's successful at everything too.
he was a army officer. He was a helicopter pilot, a skilled helicopter pilot. He was a Rhodes Scholar at the University of Oxford. He was a singer, songwriter, and writer. He was an actor. He was a father of eight. You know what I mean? And everything he did well. It wasn't like he failed at he was great at everything. And
And I
everyone wanted to work with him. Everybody did,
think
you
his
know?
attitude was always humble. He was always a humble guy. He
Yeah, I mean,
never show off or anything at all, ever about anything.
and he was janitoring. Here's what happened. You mentioned the janitor thing. Well, he finished up in Oxford and he got a position. He was going to be, he was a Yank at Oxford, and he was going to stay in the military. They wanted his relatives wanted him, his family wanted him to stay in the military, and he said no. I want to leave the army and I'm going to pursue songwriting. And they said, well, if you do that, we're disowning you, and they
No.
did. He didn't speak. Well, that was a huge mistake, wasn't it? Looking at it over the years, he went on to much success, but that's exactly what happened to him. He
Good
was
man.
he was he was working at Columbia Records in Nashville. He went right to Nashville. He knew where
He
the
was in a studio.
songwriters, and he was in there and he ran into Cash, and he had sent, that's when he was still working, and Cash liked him. He was sweeping up floors. They established a relationship. That's the famous story about him later on. He had given a song to June. June said sure, and she was not I'll give it to Johnny, and it hit a stack like this big of songs that had been given to her for Johnny. So he wasn't making any headway. So he grabbed the helicopter from the National Guard or wherever, that the company, and he landed it on Cash's front yard. So that got his attention. And one of the songs that Cash saw was Sunday Morning Coming Down.
That's right. Oh,
And
well,
and
that
and
was worth
he
up the price, I guess.
yeah, and he made it his own, of course. Johnny did,
Now,
you know.
of course, the other one we've got Jesus was a Capricorn, the song he wrote
Oh yeah.
mine, and Help Me, Jesse Younger, Give It Time to Be Tender, Why Me, Sure Was Love, Nobody Wins, Enough for You. Yeah, this is another classic. This is executive producer Fred Foster. I don't know who that guy was
Yeah.
and everything, but this is one where there's Gary. I mean, Larry Gatlin is involved in it pretty heavily. Rita, of course, is Rita Coolidge is on a good.
Right.
Here's a nice shot in the gatefold here of them
Yeah.
doing
They met in the 70s. He and
it.
Rita Coolidge. They married in 1973, and that's when they released the album Full Moon together. Bunch of
Yeah,
hit singles, Grammy nominations. Now their relationship didn't last,
yeah.
but they made some really good music together. She was a
It's
very good singer.
yeah, it's funny when she fell out with him. I think one of the guys of all the people that she fell in with, I think her next boyfriend,
Right.
the drummer for the Nas, Tom Mitney, who was like,
Really? Yeah.
yeah, he was playing. I think he played for a while with uh, who was it? Maybe it was the guy that was in Fleetwood Mac later. He played for a while with him and the guy from Jethro,
Right.
a band called Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And he took a break. Uh, you know, uh, some great films if you get a chance to see them. In the '70s, his first film, Cisco Pike, with Gene Hackman.
yeah,
Then he did Bloom in Love, directed by Paul Mazursky. He did three Peckinpah films, three Sam Peckinpah. He did Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, Bring
yeah.
Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, and of course Convoy, which is the big.
Yeah, wow, wow, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a big hit. And then Semi Tough with Bert. He was in that, the football movie, the
Wow.
prison football
I
movie.
remember that. I remember that.
Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore in '74. Kind of a softcore erotica based on a Japanese uh, novel. The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. That was in '76. That was with Sarah Miles, who was a popular English actress at the time. But he just continued to work. He did one of they call it one of the biggest flops in history, the 1980, the Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate. He was a star. He had the starring role in that. That was an epic. That was a epic western. And he just worked constantly. He worked through the 2000s.
Yeah.
He was in the Blade films. He had a big role in those. He made it. He could have made a living and never did music again. He was doing so
Well,
well in film.
but the thing of it is, he did continue to make new music. In fact,
He did.
they made an entire a new album of original songs produced by Don Was at the end of the 2000s, 2009, called "Closer to the Bone." I
Right.
checked that out. I was not aware of that. I need
Yeah.
to. Funny how certain things happen and you don't know. But I mean, I always had admired him. I wanted to say something about his actions towards Sinead O'Connor when they gave him shit. They gave her shit at the Dylan thing. He said loud enough for people could hear over the mic. He told them, "Don't let the motherfuckers get you down." Or
Yeah. And
yeah,
so he made a comment about that.
yeah,
And and he said he called her a little girl, and somebody got oh. But if you looked at her on that stage that day, that evening,
yeah.
she looked like a little girl. She was a young girl from Ireland, and he didn't
He
mean it in a derogatory term. He was just very protective of her.
exactly. He did the manly thing. He stepped up. We stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, I found a clip that I hadn't seen, which I've seen a ton of Sinead. I saw Sinead back in '90. Um, and I've followed her career for years. And I found a clip from 2010. He was on an Irish talk show in 2010, and she traveled over to the city and kind of surprised him. And they did a version of "Help Me Make It Through the Night" on Irish television, which was phenomenal. If you find it, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah. There's a lot of stuff. He did one more album after that. I think original songs and stuff, live album, but retired by 2021, and then before the time he passed. So,
yeah, I mean,
shame.
he passed at 88 years old at his estate at Maui. Had a
Yeah,
beautiful estate in Northern California. You should see that one. He loved. He apparently he loved that Pacific view. You know what I mean? Both places he lived had these sprawling views of the Pacific, and who wouldn't love that? You know.
you're right. You're right.
So yeah, he was a California guy after a while, and that's where he spent his time in California. And like you say, Maui was where he passed, surrounded by his family. You know, so can't and his achievements. One person, it could be. We might not ever see that again. It could be two life. It could be a lifetime again because if you find somebody that's that talented that can do everything and has done everything. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I saw him with the Highwaymen, and not after that, not too long after that, I saw him with open for Dylan again at Wolf Trap one night, and
Ah.
when Dylan was in the hey,
Did they, did they play together? Did
best.
they
Opposite was the best of the show. It was the best out there. He was great.
did
Good
they
show.
do anything together that night?
Together. No, he just announced him and got out of the way. Yeah.
Wow. Well, he's like that,
Yeah, that was right before his epiphany or whatever, Dylan's epiphany. But anyway, this is a tribute to Kris Kristofferson. We both want to say,
Safe
R.I.P.
travels.
Yes,
Yeah.
safe travels and a toast to him. We will catch you guys next time. Please leave your comments and any good things, thoughts you have about Kris Kristofferson. He certainly deserved it, and Dino and I we'll be back at you very shortly with a
Sure.
brand new. Talk to you guys next time. Thanks.
See ya. Bye bye.
Hey, Joe.